Okay, now we look at example 5. Let S be the set of all integers and let G be the set of all bijective mappings on S, that is sigma in A of S, that change at most finitely many elements of S. For at most finitely many x in S. So G is a subset of A of S and G is not all of A of S. I leave it to you to see that there may be some bijections on S which do not fix finitely, which do not change finitely many elements, but they change infinitely many elements. Such bijections will not belong to G, but they of course will belong to A of S since they are bijections on S. Now our aim here is to show that this subset G, just like A of S, also forms a group under composition of mappings. So let us now verify that G forms a group under composition of mappings. Before verifying that something is a group, a set, you have to make sure that it is non-empty. Note that iota, the element that is the identity map on S, we have already seen that this acts as an identity element in A of S under this operation. So that map now also belongs to G. Why? Because X is equal to X iota for all X belonging to S. So this condition is not for iota, this condition is not satisfied by any X in S. That means the set of elements or the set of integers X that satisfy this condition when you have iota in place of sigma is the empty set, which is finite. So that's why iota belongs to G. Thus G is non-empty. Next we show that G is closed under composition of mappings. So let us take two elements, sigma and tau in G. Then the sets X belonging to S such that X sigma, okay, since we were writing X first, let us write like that, X not equal to X sigma and the set of all integers which are changed by tau are both finite. This finiteness is coming from this assumption that sigma and tau are in G. So by definition these two sets are finite. Then this set is also finite. X not equal to X sigma composition tau is also finite. Why? See, if you have an element in this set, then that element has to be changed by at least one of sigma or tau, maybe both. If neither sigma nor tau changes x, what happens then? What happens to x sigma composition tau if neither sigma nor tau changes x? By definition of composition, we have this. If sigma does not change x, then we have x. If tau also does not change x, we have this. So that means for this to happen, we should have at least one of these. And that's why this actually is a subset of the union of these two. Or in fact, instead of making it so complicated, you can just simply think of it like this. Because any element which is being changed by sigma composition tau has to be changed by at least one of sigma or tau, and since the number of elements changed by sigma as well as the number of elements changed by tau are both finite, so this set is also finite. This implies sigma composition tau belongs to G. Okay. Since composition of maps is associative in the larger set A of S, it is also associative in the subset G. In the subset G means when we take the elements from G in the associative law, the equation that appears in the associative law, then that is true. And that is true because G is inside A of S. Next, this we have already seen this. Iota belongs to G such that iota composition sigma is equal to sigma composition iota equal to sigma for all sigma belonging to G. Actually, this is true for all sigma in A of S, but we only need the sigmas in G. Finally, let sigma belonging to G. Let sigma belong to G, then this set is finite X sigma is finite. Hence, what about this set? X not equal to X sigma inverse. What about this set? If we take an element here in this set, say in the second set, then we have X not equal to X sigma inverse. Do you feel that this implies X is not equal to X sigma? It is, because if you have otherwise, that is if X is equal to X sigma, then you apply sigma inverse on both sides, you will have this. This will ultimately give us x, because by the definition of composition we will have sigma composition sigma inverse, which is iota. X iota is x. So this directly contradicts this one. So if this is true, then this is true. Conversely, if this is true, then also you can show similarly that this is true. In other words, these two sets are actually equal, and we are not going to dwell on the equality more than the fact that it is true. We are not going to say anything about it. We just simply note it as a fact that this set is equal to this set. Hence, this is equal to this. Is finite. Which implies sigma inverse belongs to G. So G is a group under composition of matrix. Now, can we say something more about this group? I mean, is it finite? Is it infinite? Is it abelian? So let us see what those things can be. For any integer n, let us define we are going to define some functions. Fn from S into S, and the definition of Fn will be partly given. Fn at the integer m is defined to be equal to m plus 1 if m is equal to n. Okay, and if m is equal to n plus 1, m minus 1 if m is equal to n plus 1, and m if m does not belong to this set, it is neither n nor n plus 1. So this map, what does this map do actually? Let us see. For example, if we think of f naught, and we have what is S? S is the set of all integers, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. So when our input is 0, when this is the input m, when m is equal to n, in our case n is 0. If our input is 0, then we are mapping that onto m plus 1, that is 0 plus 1, which is equal to 1. So the image of 0 is 1. Now if my input is n plus 1, that is if input is 1, because n now is 0, then the image is 1 minus 1, 0. and the other elements are mapped onto themselves by the mapping. Other elements are unchanged. So clearly all these mappings that we have defined here, keep in mind that we have defined a mapping for every integer n. All these mappings change exactly 2 elements, that is finitely many elements. So all of them belong to our group G. The general thing looks like this. You can probably understand, but let me just show it also. N minus 2. Do I need to? Okay, let me just write n minus 1, n plus 1, n plus 2. Like this it will go unbounded in either direction. So if my m is n, then this is the image is n plus 1. If my m is n plus 1, then the image is n, and the rest are mapped onto themselves. Yes. So the general situation is this. So each one of them will map, will change exactly 2 integers, the others are left fixed. Note that the set of integers we can write, since we have seen what this map does, x not equal to x fn is equal to n comma n plus 1, and hence fn belongs to G for all n belonging to S, for all integers n. Further, you can clearly see that these fn's are distinct. None of them, no fn is equal to some other fm if n and m are different. Since the fn's are all distinct or are all easily seen to be distinct, G is infinite, because we have now find infinitely many elements in G. Okay. Moreover, okay, now we see whether G is abelian or not, and in that we are going to use these functions. Moreover, the following are true, or the following is true. Let us try to calculate F1 composition F2 and F2 composition F1, and our aim is to show that these two are not equal. That will prove that G is not abelian. In fact, that is the fact that G is not abelian. It's enough to show that these two functions have different images at some point. Okay. This is because if we calculate this image, then it is 1 F1 F2. So what is 1 F1? 1 F1 if you have 1 here now, if our input is 1, then it is mapped onto the successor. So 1f1 is 2, like that 2f2 is 3. But if we calculate 1 f2 composition f1, if we have 2 here, then f2 changes 2 to 3 and 3 to 2 and keeps everything else fixed. In particular, f2 keeps 1 fixed. So this gives us 1 f1, which is equal to 2. These two images are different, 3 and 2. So that's why these two functions are also different. Hence, G is non-abelian. So G is an infinite non-abelian group. Next we come to example 6. This example treats matrices. Matrices you probably have already seen, or actually you know from your school days about matrices, about their addition and multiplication. So this example will not be something entirely unknown to you, even if you are seeing these things for the first time, but you are familiar with matrices. Let G be the set of all 2 by 2 matrices A, B, C, D, where these entries are real numbers and AD minus BC is equal to 1. You also know about this quantity. This is nothing but the determinant of this matrix. Oh, I think this is in the next example we have this condition, sorry. AD minus BC is not equal to 0. Okay, so the determinants of these matrices are non-zero. In G, we define dot to be the operation of multiplication of two matrices. Multiplication of matrices. We now are going to show that this is also a group under this operation. Now some facts about matrix multiplication we are going to assume from your school courses, which are not very difficult, and since we are dealing with only 2 by 2 matrices, things are especially easy. Or let us just start like this. Let A, B, C, D, comma E, F, G, H be two matrices in G. Then AD minus BC is non-zero and EH minus FG is also non-zero. Now we multiply them. Recall the rule for multiplying two matrices. The first row, first column entry will be obtained by taking the dot product of the first row and first column. That is, this first row is AB and the first column is EG. To take the dot product, you multiply corresponding components of these. If you treat these things as vectors, corresponding components means you multiply A with E, B with G, and you add those products. So you have AE plus BG. Like that, for the first row, second column, you multiply the first row and the second column, AF plus BH. Then second row, first column, CE plus BG, and finally second row and second column, CF plus BH. Now there is no doubt that these are also real number entries, but we have to verify this condition, that is, for this matrix also the determinant is non-zero, that we have to verify. Note that the entries of the product are real numbers. Also, now if we form this quantity for this matrix, then we will have this times this minus this times this. So let us calculate that. AE plus BG times CF plus DH minus AF plus BH times CE plus DG. What do we get if we multiply these things out? AECF plus AE DH plus BGCF plus BGDH minus AFCE minus AFDG minus BHCE minus BHDG. Now there are some cancellations, I think. AECF, so these two things cancel. Just for the sake of identifying them, I am writing like this, although it's a bad habit. What else get cancelled? AFDG, we don't have any AFDG. BHC, I think BHDG, yes, these two cancel each other. Now from what is remaining, what is left behind, okay, look at these two terms, this one and this one. From them we can take AD common out. Doing so, I get AD times what is left, EH minus FG. From these two terms also, I take BC common out, or rather let me take minus BC common out. Then we have, from this second term we have EH, and from this one we have minus, since we have taken minus BC common out, minus FG. So now you see that we have EH minus FG on both the terms. So taking that common out, we are left with this. So you see that the determinant of this product is actually equal to the product of the determinants. This result in general is true for square matrices and will be proved at some point when we will deal with matrices. But now what do we get from this calculation? You see, this thing is non-zero, is a non-zero real number. This thing is a non-zero real number. So their product is also non-zero. So the determinant of the product is non-zero and the product consists of real entries. Hence, by the definition of G, this product belongs to G. So this belongs to G. Now we are going to use a result from our previous courses on matrix, elementary matrix theory, that multiplication of matrices is an associative operation. So we just simply going to write we know. Later on in the text, when we deal with matrices in their connection with linear transformations, there we will actually prove that multiplication of matrices is an associative operation. Till then you can just take it as a fact, and since we are dealing with 2 by 2 matrices here, at least in this example, if you are really doubtful about whether the operation is really associative, you can verify by calculating. Although the calculation will be somewhat cumbersome, you just take the product of 3 matrices in 2 different ways and see that the end results are the same. So that will tell you that it's associative. We know that matrix multiplication, we said, did we give a dot while defining this multiplication? I can't remember. If we have mentioned a dot, then use that in between 2 matrices. Otherwise, there is no need to use. Is an associative operation. Next, this matrix, which you know is called the 2 by 2 identity matrix. This belongs to Gy because its determinant is 1, which is non-zero, such that to save space we can write like this, I equal to this. So by capital I we mean this identity matrix, such that I dot A is equal to A dot I is equal to A for all A